Hi, welcome to the Nobodies Project. This is where I interview artists across all different mediums about their creative process, how they started, maybe where they're going, maybe their favorite project, maybe their least favorite project, their biggest rut, how they stay creative. And bigger than that, this is a community. So we want you to be involved. We want you to submit your artwork to us, and you can do that at submit@thenobodiesproject.com. You can send us an email, and we promise to give you honest, real feedback because we think everybody deserves it. And that feedback isn't just going to come from us at the Nobodies Project, it's also going to come from the featured artists that you see on our website and in this episode. This week we have Titus. Wow, they are the most talented animator maybe I've ever met. Even online, holy crap, this person is ridiculously talented. Not only are they talented, everything they make is with character and personality, and there's care. There's true care and passion in the things that they make. I can't wait for you to hear even more about their story. Thank you for watching the Nobodies Project. This is whatever episode I decide to make it. And this episode, we have Titus, an animator, illustrator. I miss a bunch of other things as well. And I'll let you get into all that. But the first question I always like to ask is, what do you do for money? And then what do you do for art?
Ooh, I guess for money, I do like brand design, motion graphics, explainer videos, sizzle reels, anything product related. And then I guess for art, I like to do cartoons and illustrations and backgrounds and comic books and things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So there's a couple projects of yours that I really, really like that I'm going to point out. The Wake and Skate.
Yeah.
That's kind of some of the first cartoon stuff I saw. That's kind of the first thing I saw from you and really got invested into it, just like your overall style of it.
Nice.
Can you take me through like some of your inspirations or how you got to that project and some of the more cartoon-based stuff?
Yeah, that's actually a super personal and heavy project, so get ready.
Yeah.
Basically, I guess what was an inspiration? I guess Steven Universe was definitely like one of the starters for the inspiration, especially for the backgrounds and some of the content. Beavis and Butthead, definitely. Things like that. I liked having a heavy message. Oh, BoJack Horseman was also another good one. Yeah. And what I did with Wake and Skate originally was supposed to be like an episodic kind of show that was kind of stuck in a funny world, not really like serious or anything like that. And I was gonna make it I don't know, just every episode was based off kind of like the regular show. Every episode something just crazy happens,
Kind of like Tuki and Birdie, where they really take the animation far away.
Yes.
Too. Yeah.
But then height of Black Lives Matter happened. I was living in downtown Portland, and I was having like a hard time accepting that I was about to create something that I didn't really put a lot of work into, I guess. I mean, like, there was a lot of drawing and illustration, but for the content, I didn't really have a message. And I didn't like that. So I got challenged to kind of create something a little bit more real.
Okay.
And I like tragedies a lot, so I know it's like total opposite of probably what you would think, but I really do like dark stories and just things that end in reality. So when I created Wake and Skate a second time, I closely based it off of things I've been through, and just a lot of like, I'm a recovering alcoholic, so I went through a lot of that stuff, and then the homelessness when I was like 17. There's a lot of reflections and things like that. So I decided to create a 2-season, 10 to 12 episode series called Wake and Skate. That's a little bit more real. That's based in Portland and San Francisco.
Oh, hell yeah. Kind of go off that, another project where you're saying that, you know, stuff that matters, your stats that matter on Instagram are like, I'm a huge sucker for. I love your style, but I'm a huge sucker for like geometric and like very like with graphs and all that stuff. Those are some of my favorite animations that you have on Instagram. Where did that come from? Was it kind of the similar thing where it comes from a tragedy in that darker area?
It came from that darker area, but it wasn't tragedy. I actually got super inspired by s1ep9's Patriot Act. And I was on Netflix. It was like a pretty cool series where he would dissect current events that were happening. And it was done with like comedy, but also delivered by a brown guy where I was like, oh,
he's
shit.
great. Yeah, I've seen the show.
Yeah. So, and then the animations behind it, I was like, holy shit, who is this team? I want to work for you guys so bad. But I was like, how are you going to notice me? Like, what am I going to do? And then the show got shut down and it got canceled. And I was like, well, I can make something that's like this. So I wanted to create something that was based off of stats that nobody could kind of come after me after.
You can't argue. Like,
you can't argue numbers.
Like
Yeah. So I did that. And the first few were just my designs and then things that I really gave a shit about. And then after that, can I curse?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Things I gave a shit about. And it went from there into including other designers. And I was like, well, I want to work with a lot of people. Who can I work with? So I started reaching out to all these designers that I knew that I was really inspired by. And they started telling me topics that they were interested in. So I did some of the research and I did the animation while they designed everything. And and I did a first series that was 12 episodes. And I'm like wondering if I'm going to pick it back up because it is one of my favorite pieces. But if I did, I want to make it into something bigger than a minute or 30 seconds.
Right, like almost like a whole like explained kind of video.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So to get on to a different gear, what would be... So one thing I always like to ask about is creative ruts. So I see a lot of your work on Instagram, and I know it's Instagram, and I don't know you super personally or anything. So it's not like I know that you're working all day, every day, putting stuff out. Yeah. But take me through how much work you get done, and like where your ruts come from, and how you get out of them.
That's a good one. I guess I would have to say, like, I try to keep pretty creative because I'm like kind of addicted to creating, and like to be honest, it kind of saved me from being in like a homeless situation or not having food. It was just crazy how quick I could provide for myself with just drawing or illustrating or doing a quick video or logo design. So I was always constantly creating, and just for the hustle, just for the movement. But then at the same time, I like to study like light and things like that. So I get so captured by other things like trees moving or a car passing at night with wet ground or something. But then that leads into the ruts. So Wake and Skate became such a really powerful project after that. It touches on so many of my traumas. So to continue that, it's like writing the pilot was difficult. Creating the backgrounds for all the places that I remember is really hard. So sometimes I get stuck in this like, oh, I'm gonna do this next week, and then 5 months later, I'm like, oh, okay, I should probably really jump on this. But
that's too relatable.
And I'll do all this other stuff that's like I'm still passionate about, but it's quicker. And it's like this quick payoff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The instant gratification. So my ruts come from there a lot, where I'm like, oh, how much effort do I want to put into this right now? And am I going to hurt while doing it? And what ends up, it's funny, is what takes me out of the ruts is life. Shit happens, and it always happens. And it's always developing. So there's moments that I hit my sad moments, and those are the moments that I constantly want to create. And I go back to creating like Wake and Skate because I have this energy and this kind of like propelling me where I'm like, oh man, this really fucking sucks. What I'm going to do? I'm a recovering alcoholic, so I can't go drink. And knowing that how I am with substances, so I'm not just going to go smoke. I guess I could just work out. I could play video games, but that doesn't really do anything in real life. And if I was going to play video games to level up in an RPG, why wouldn't I just level up in life? Like, I could just do that.
Oh, man, I wish I had that mindset.
I mean, it gets hard because it's that thing that kind of saved me. So I'm like, when I get into those really depressing states, I'm like, oh, I want to create. I want to do something with this. And sometimes it's not always drawing. Sometimes it comes out in the form of creating music or
yeah, I was gonna get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you do a whole bunch of other things, and I'll get to some of that. But one of the questions I had is, so you said homeless around 17, stuff like that. Have you always been drawing? And like, can you take me through kind of like your artist? Maybe you can go into as much as you want, but like through all those things, was drawing something that was constant? Because you have such a unique style, and I'm always envious of people who can draw that well. And I know it's not because they just wake up, they can draw.
Yeah. It wasn't that. I will say in 4th grade, I did a drawing comp, and with crayons, I came in 3rd, and I was like, lit.
That's pretty good.
It was pretty dope. But, and it was school wide. So I was like, I've beaten 12th graders with fucking crayons and shit. Like, yeah. But, you know, honestly, I didn't actually start drawing until I was maybe 19 or 18.
Really?
Yeah. And I was bored, actually. I had just became unhomeless through a funny situation where I ended up growing weed with friends in San Francisco. And that's
for a different podcast, but yeah.
Yeah, it was just so dumb. And but growing at that time, I had nothing to do. I was like, well, shit, man. You know, I just got myself into a pretty cool spot. I have all this weed and I have no money, but people want to hang out with me. So what do I do? So I would smoke and we would just chill. And I ended up drawing on mead paper, like line paper.
Yeah.
And I did like a couple of drawings that filled up the whole page with colors and things that were warping in between and out of each other. Just cool shit. And I ended up getting with my first partner at the time. Won't mention their name, but I was about to say their name. But I showed it to them, and they were like, "Whoa, this is really cool." So they've been in art like most of their whole lives. So they bought me my first drawing book with a whole bunch of colors and cool shit. So I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna let this go to waste." I think they even bound it themselves because we were in Oakland. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And I ended up drawing like crazy from like 19 until I got into animation school. And it was weird how fast that like kind of happened, where I was drawing like just my name and animals, going to the zoo and sketching. And then it went from that to like doing calligraphy for signs. And then I started doing character stuff and a lot of inking, and then I got picked up at Image Comic Books. Yeah, that was cool.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, when did you realize that drawing can make you money?
Oh, that it was then, but I was getting paid trash. I was getting paid like $13 an hour.
Everybody.
It was like
I was a full-time graphic designer. My first wage was $11.50.
Oh, so you know,
yeah.
I was struggling. It was in San Francisco, so I was like, what am I gonna do?
In San Francisco, at least I was in the Midwest, where you can kind of get by. Like San Francisco,
there was no getting by with that. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll do something different. I'll do an art show. So I tried doing an art show, and that made me $600 in the first week. But I was like, that's not gonna, carry me through this month. And I know sales are gonna decline after the opening night, like dramatically. So I was like, I told Kathy I wanted to find a way to make money with this, and she came up with the idea actually. Because I would watch cartoons and animations, and I would cry a lot, but actually I would cry at the credits. And the credits, seeing all of these names and all these people who come together from different cultures and backgrounds, I was just like enamored that something could capture so many people, but it's because it's made by so many people and it worked together. And I was like, I want my name up there, man. Like,
and that's probably a big part. Like Adventure Time's my biggest one. So with that, the end credits at the very, very end of the show, I mean, you're going to cry every time.
Yeah.
But it's also very cool because when you watch Adventure Time, you realize a lot of those people went off to make other stuff, Steven Universe as well. Yeah. And that probably just reinforced your point of all those people are so creative that they all spawned off to make other things. But yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's something that definitely propelled me, was those credits, surprisingly. And watching all those people, like you said, spawn off and create their own things was inspiring. Yeah. So she told me to go to college for animation. and I went for animation and visual effects, 3D animation.
Were you messing around with animation yet, or was it just drawing?
Actually, I was messing around with. I was doing comics, and I was about to release my own comics, and I did Swift, and Swift, the way I did it in the panels, I drew the characters' movements through all of it. So I had a bunch of drawings in it, and I realized over time that I was like, well, fuck, dude, if I just do this on top of each other, this is an animation. And I draw so many of the characters.
Like you were figuring out how animation worked.
Yeah.
You're like, how has nobody thought? Oh, they did. Okay.
They did, yeah, exactly. So I went to school for it, but I went to school for 3D, but all my top grades were in 2D. Anything drawing, I was excelling in. My 2D animation classes, I killed in. Any painting and drawing, like anything, 2D, I was killing it. And I was okay with 3D.
Then why were you in 3D? Did you just see money in it?
Well, there was Pixar. So Pixar was coming out with all this shit.
Yeah.
And the school that I went to, Pixar made. So I thought, I was like, oh, I'm going to get into this shit. And when I got there, I was like, I'm not getting into this shit. And it was also kind of a weird experience because the school I went to was so close to being in the black community that all the black kids, I won't say all of them, but there was a majority that went there for music. So, and oftentimes I would be asked if I was going there for music to create beats, which was super offensive to me. Yeah. And I was like, yo, dude, nah, I'm here for animation. And then I would get like a super surprise, like, oh, it's like, yeah, dude, totally. It's normal shit. So that's kind of how I got into animation. And I actually didn't finish that college.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't afford it. They were kicking my ass with that money, and every semester or every term I had to take out a $250 loan on top of the payments I was already paying. So every semester just stacked. And I finally was like, I can't do $700, $800 payments.
No, who can?
Yeah, for fucking
especially,
school.
Yeah, you're in school, so that means you probably don't have a huge backing of money, or like unless you come from a very wealthy background. But yeah, that's crazy. So you went from dropping out of college to, which honestly I wish I did. I got a bullshit major, so I went to art school, and then within my first semester I realized I couldn't draw, so I was the opposite of you, and that was a big part of the art school, so I dropped out and then got kind of the easiest major just so I could, which was sports management.
Ooh.
Which
what can you do? That sounds pretty dope.
Yeah, it sounds cool, but TV. it's all the ex-athletes. Oh. So all the ex-athletes would go in there and get that because it's super easy, because it was like business, sports business. So it's like just easier stuff. And there's literally a class at the end of the whole program where they just sit you down. They're like, now you need to be prepared to make very little money for a very long time.
Fuck
it's like,
you.
Dude, I'm now 40K
that
or like 50K
in class, man.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. And then I just did graphic design on the side, and then all that stuff, and I ended up making more money doing that. And I was like, why'd I get this major? And I have another buddy who we went to school together, didn't get design degrees, and now we're both designers in some capacity. And we just joke around about why the fuck did we go to school? And then how did you, after you drop out of college, was it, panic, or were you had some freelance or something going on, or some path?
There was panic, but I had a plan. Like, my whole idea was that I would accept any job as long as that it was propelling me towards art, I guess, in a way. So as long as I was getting paid to do something like that. And
wait, you weren't like every other freelancer when they start out, I'll take anything that pays?
Yeah, no. It got there, but there was some things. So my dad, growing up, would always tell me, oh, don't be upset that about your jobs. You don't wipe asses for a living. I used to wipe asses in the volunteer Army Reserve. I'm just like, okay, whatever, man. And then I met this guy partying one night in San Francisco, and lo and behold, he ran an adult daycare facility, but offered me a position as multimedia instructor. And at the time, I didn't have a job, and I was like, well, fuck, that still has a title.
Yeah,
but
that's a resume builder.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not necessarily towards art, as you said, but it's a resume builder.
With the title, I could fool some people.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right.
And yourself enough to accept it. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was, and I was wiping asses for a living, technically, at that time. And I remember coming home and telling Dad so excitedly, like, you can't tell me anymore. I'm like, I did what you did. Fuck off. Like. And that was a very interesting couple of jobs I had, because there were moments where I did mural restoration.
Nice.
I taught kids how to do mural classes. I've taught game design, art. I've done summer camps where I was teaching art for younger kids. Like anytime, like I could kind of stay in the realm of art and produce, until I got an internship in Berkeley, and I was there for a year. And they picked me up as an animator, and I got very lucky because the person who also worked there as a designer just somehow taught for years After Effects. So they came over and would give me tips all the time, and that just like boosted me up all the way. Like my skills dramatically increased in a year, but not enough to stay there. So I found another job in Palo Alto, which was like my biggest landing. But it was funny because it was right after that ass wiping job, and I'm sorry I'm referring to it as that, but that's where we're
just
at.
been factual.
Yeah. And my mom told me to go to Wingstop, and my friend worked there, and I went to the interview, and they were like, yeah, just come tomorrow to pick up your uniform. And I just kept telling my mom, I was like, dude, if I take this job, it's going to fuck up my whole life. Like, if I take this job, I won't have the time to do what I want to do. And the next day I didn't go get the uniform. I said, fuck it. And 2 weeks later, I got a job at Bird Eye in Palo Alto that was a startup company and an incubator. And I stayed there for 2 years and developed my skills crazily behind like Google's new material design system. And that's when they were just busting that out. And I dramatically increased my skills while I was there. Like After Effects was my best friend. I lived and breathed that. And then probably a year and a half into that, I got asked to go home and to work from home. And it was very interesting because I was the only African American in the space. So I was kind of interested about that decision. And there was other things that had happened that brought up race while I was there. So I was already kind of like on edge. But with that being said, work from home, I was living in Antioch. I was like, you know what? I can go to Portland. So I moved here with that job.
Nice.
Yeah.
What? Why Portland?
No.
We can skip.
No,
that.
that's a good one. But it's like, so Portlandia, that show came out, and I was like, oh, that looks lit. Like, I want to move to Portland. But then, in all honesty, when I got here, the first year fucking sucked. And after the end, I was like, fuck, there were no brown people in that fucking show. And I didn't notice it. I was like, how the fuck did I not see that? So this show's amazing, but there's no diversity, and they're telling you all the shit things that are fucking here. Like they're telling you in your face, and all you think it's so fun. And then you get here, you're like, oh, this is a culture shock. But after the first year, I was definitely I had acclimated a little more, and I found like some groups of friends and things like that, and like where I like to be and where I like to go, and
just finding that community, like what I was talking about
at the
very beginning. Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. Actually, when I got here the first year, I started drinking a lot. I was not used to this environment where there's no corner stores, so I couldn't just go buy a fucking bottle and go home. I have to go out. Now I'm getting all social and shit and spending money on random people, like. But then I thought I would be meeting like animators and other designers. I'm like, this is how adults meet people, right? Like they go out, and I would have all these funny ass like, oh, I'm going on a business meeting at the bar, and like what the fuck does that mean? And I would have all these funny conversations where we're like, we're gonna make something together, and then we never hit each other up again. I'm like, all right, this isn't the way. And then I quit drinking after making a fool of myself at Oddfellas. Oh man, yeah. I went in there and I had a couple of drinks, and it was the vibe of Palo Alto, and I was pretty scarred from that. So I went off a little bit, and I was like, oh, so you guys are only hiring white men and Asian women, huh? It's like, and I called them out, and we were all having a conversation. I made them super uncomfortable, and I was like, well, there goes my opportunity to work there. And it was funny. Like a year later, I ended up working at Instrument out here that occupied the same building.
I have a friend who works at Instrument.
Oh, yeah. And I was there for like 7 months, and then I dipped from there.
Yeah. They have that building right off Williams, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Super cool building.
It is. Yeah. Oddfellas is right across. Like they're
is
the same.
it?
Same building.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was fun being there.
Yeah, I'd love to, excuse me, go through some more of your work experience, but let's actually take like 5 minutes break, give the cameras a little break, and then I'll come back with like another 20, 25 minutes, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, awesome, thanks. All right, well, I like to take a little break. Just sometimes the cameras mess up, so I try not to stress them out too much. But let's see here. What's your least favorite project?
For the sake of just a quick answer, I'm probably going to have to say Adidas. That one, I don't like selling clothes to people. I don't like telling people that they have to feel a certain way in clothes, or to tell them that they without these clothes that they are lesser, and it's not some shit that I'm into. So I was there for a month or two, and I think the first week I was very excited about the clout, and I was like, oh, it's Adidas, I'm gonna look so dope. And then
that's a lot of designers, like the end goal is to Apple, Nike, Adidas, something in there. But
yeah, and I don't want to do clothes. So that one definitely probably was my most hated project. Like, I just left. I did not care about anything.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I gave them 2 weeks, but I still was like, fuck you.
Yeah. What's a project that you were initially, I mean, maybe like a specific piece of art that you were really, really proud of, and now you were really, really excited about, and then you put it out and maybe it didn't get the reaction you wanted? Or maybe just a project that you put out that should have got way more love, in your opinion, and it just didn't for some reason.
Yeah, I directed a project that I led. It's called How to Make Transformational Change for Black Professionals. And one of my ex-coworkers at Instrument did an article for Fast Company that was titled that. And when I read it, I cried. I was like, this is fucking amazing. And I ended up making it into an animation, but I didn't hire. I worked with like 8 designers and animators. Yeah, it was a pretty big project. I think it was actually even more, probably like 10 or 12. But over a course of a year, we all animated this piece together. And by the end of it, I lost so much steam because 4 the animators had dropped out on their parts, or 3. So I ended up having to do 4 out of 8 animations on that for a 10-minute piece, and it was so much work. And along with redesigning mine, because my initial one died on a computer I had, which I learned a lot from that. Yeah. I was like, all right, I'm working off of Drive everything. Everything's connected to a cloud somehow. That's how we're running this. And so I had to redesign my first piece, which really sucked. I did so much character work on it, but it didn't stop me. But by the end, I didn't do a trailer piece for it, and that really hurt, I think, the project a little bit.
Yeah.
And but nowadays, even when I share it with people are like, you need to make a trailer for this. Like, and I just like gotta find the time for that. But when I do, I want to make a trailer for it, and I want to submit it to some more film festivals, and then get it back. And someone actually told me I should write Fast Company and let them know that we made this. And
yeah,
I didn't even think about that. So that's next on the list. Which it was in an interview like last week, and they were like, "Yeah, you should tell them." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I will. Thank you." Yeah.
Well, that's good that it's like living on. Like, you're still passionate about it, where you're like, well, I'm still going to push it, even though it didn't get as big of a fanfare as you wanted.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Imposter syndrome. I want to get into like if you have imposter syndrome as well, but I'm also interested in like your process as an animator, because getting into After Effects, I'm pretty, at least compared to you, I'm very, early stages. But I think people really underestimate how long it takes to animate something.
Yeah.
And when you see something animated like on a commercial or anything, people don't realize how long that takes.
Yeah.
So if you could just talk a little bit about like how long a typical animation for you would take and like your process in it. Because by now you're probably close to a pro where it's pretty quick, but it's still an animation.
Yeah. That's a good one. It really depends on how much control of the project I have.
Okay.
If it's a situation where I'm working with a ton of designers and there's a lot of feedback, that goes on for quite some time. But
so work projects way longer.
Oh, way longer.
Yeah.
But then if it's like my personal projects, I tend to kind of work through a flow where I'm like, okay, to be honest, no, that's a lie too. I was gonna say most of the most of the work goes into the thought, because I remember hearing this thing that Einstein's, if he had 5 minutes to do something, he'd spend 4 minutes thinking and a minute doing. And that's kind of the logic that I try to live by, but that's not what happens. But I spend a ton of time thinking. And I do know the program so well now that, you know, I live and breathe it. If I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about something, what's the best way to do that? Or if I see something like grass moving in the wind, like, how would I do that? How would I paint that and bring that in Illustrator or After Effects or Procreate? And it's just constantly in my head. Like, these programs now live there, so yeah. I could run After Effects in my head completely without having a computer in front of my face. And it just became like that because I guess you could say it was my savior in a way. When I found out what I could do with After Effects, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I mean, hand-drawn animation was dope, but the amount of work that it took to complete character things was so much work. Yep. You come in from storyboarding, and then you have to do concepts of character design, and you bring it into a hand-drawn animation program where then you're talking. If you're lucky, you're doing 24 frames a second. And if you chop that in half, you get 12 drawings per 24 per second if you're doing holds. And if you're not, you're doing 24 drawings a second. And that's intense. And but then After Effects comes along, and you can rig things and do all of these really cool things with vectors. And Toon Boom has that too, but After Effects is just a little bit more accessible.
Oh yeah.
And it mirrors kind of like a Premiere. Yeah. Or like a more intense Photoshop or something like that.
Oh yeah, you really realize like how powerful that program is when you really start diving into it. Because I've seen people who do all their illustrations on After Effects.
Yeah,
and it's nuts, but it's so interesting. Like, I started with Illustrator, and then I'm not a huge fan of Photoshop. I don't use it very much. But After Effects is the one that, like, once I got into it, I'm like, holy fuck, there's so much you can do here, and I'm not even touching 4D yet, like all that stuff.
Right.
Like, yeah, even if you never touch 4D, it's still one of the most powerful programs.
It is. It has, and it just keeps getting more powerful. All these updates, yeah. And I often just, there's times where I'll do a drawing, and I'm like, oh, I should vectorize this, and I'm like, not jumping into Illustrator, going straight to After Effects. I'll do it there, or like I'll figure out if I'm doing an illustration in Procreate, I'm like, well, if I'm going in After Effects, I'm gonna make it 3 times as big, so I know that I can size it and do whatever I want with it. And just After Effects is pretty insane with what you can do based off of all the different styles that you see out there. Yeah. You can really just find, like you said, it's so expansive. And then we're only talking about the native program. Yeah. If you get extensions and plugins,
it's a whole different world. Yeah,
yeah, it's crazy.
Talking about your style, though, something that I really like about it is that I find with a lot of like Instagram people who are really heavy into After Effects, there's either in really, really realistic and then kind of the abstract, like making different worlds. It's not really based in reality. It kind of follows the physics of reality. Mm-hmm. But the thing I liked about your style is it's very clear it's what you see. And the biggest thing for me when I started actually feeling a little bit more confident, you see something, maybe it's like a commercial or anything, and you're like, oh, I know how they did that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the first start of like, oh, I'm starting to understand the program. But for you, I feel like you take it to another level, which you kind of explained. You look outside and you see something moving, and you can take that into After Effects. Yeah. So how'd you find that style of like, it is abstract, but it's so rooted in reality? But I kind of think, and not to draw it all the way back, but like Steven Universe is kind of the similar thing, where it's wild, it's all over the place, but it's rooted in real problems and real reality. Can you take me through like how you found kind of your voice and your style in there?
Yeah, there's a few things. Material design, when that came out, it was the first time a company, Google, but decided to put out a brand packet where they were like, this is how we made everything. This is what we did. This is how we did it. This is who we hired. This is what we did, and you have access to everything. And at that moment, all the companies were like, "Fuck off! We're developing our own shit." And it showed. Our apps were barely working on our phones. The styles were all different. None of the UI were the same. We couldn't find buttons from app to app. Like it was trash. And then they came out with this material design, and I was like, "Wow, the way it moves." replicates the way animation was taught to me, where there's 12 principles of animation to make a character or anything feel real, or kind of to make it attractive and imitate life. When I was doing After Effects, I saw there being a very mechanical way of animating. And then I started to see that Google was taking that animation character, that life, that playfulness animation has, and they're putting it into motion design. So it's gaining more like character, I guess. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, I want to do that. I want to show how I feel and how things move. But on top of that, I used to watch music videos a lot.
Oh yeah.
So watching people dance and move, and I was always into those dance competitions and things like that. I remember my ex, we were watching something, and she had watched me work on this project for maybe a month straight, and then we were watching Les Twins dance, and they're like a famous black duo, but they're twins, and they fucking imitate each other like seamlessly. And she watched it, and she was like, "You took that from here." And I was like, "I did." And I did because it was something that they did that I took, and I used their motion in my shit. And I was like, okay, well, I have to make sure that when I'm doing things that I want there to be weight, I want there to be character, I want there to be heart, and I want people to feel. And when I create motion, it has to have emotion. Yeah. So I want them to feel shit.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic answer. All right. Kind of going more into the social media and stuff like that. How do you feel about Instagram followers, stuff like that? I feel like, especially everything we talked about, social media is just not anything that we should care about. But in terms of like creating stuff and putting stuff out into the public, it's kind of always on somebody's mind, right?
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I'd love to blow up. I'd love to get big from just my work. How do you handle the social media part of everything?
That's a good question. I'll tell you this. The social media aspect of it for me definitely holds a fondness in my heart because I'm constantly trying to create things for quick, what did we say earlier?
Instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Yeah.
And I have this need for acceptance at times where I'm like, oh, I am a good artist. This is what I do. I give a fuck. Like, do you see? And, I give so many fucks about so many things that I tend to put a lot of effort into that quick gratification so that people can see that I'm good. But what's funny is that that puts Wake and Skate on the back burner a lot. Right. And I know deeply in my heart that the things that I'm doing now will be relevant to the times at the moment, but it's quick art. It's like quick fashion, fast fashion. I'm producing things that I know that are gonna get lost at times, and with that, I don't have the high expectation that this is gonna get noticed. Now, I do know that no good work goes unnoticed, but I question myself all the time. How much energy am I putting into creating good work? Am I just doing something really fast so that people can check it out and I know that I'm really good at this? Or am I going to challenge myself? And what I mean by that is that I know Wake and Skate is a good product, and I know that it's a good story. I know that there's a lot of heart in it, and that that story should be told because there's not many stories like that. And when I think about this imposter syndrome, I don't see Wake and Skate. That when I look at that, I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then when I do everything else, I'm like, oh, I'm good. But it's not like I'm like, oh, this is gonna get me a lot of likes. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it didn't get that many likes. I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, because you spent 2 days on it versus 3 years, 5 years on Wake and Skate. Finish that shit, man. And yeah, so that's where I kind of lie with that. I don't put too much weight into the things I post on Instagram, but I will say I think it's because I tried to make space for that. Like my Instagram, my main one just has finished products, and then I have another one that's called Titus Creates. That's like things that my finished products processing. Like how do I create it? What programs am I doing? And I'm a little bit more free flow with that.
Okay.
So I can post whenever, and then on the one my personal one, I'm always like, okay, I want to make sure that what I put out there is polished and it represents how I feel, not the process that I go through.
Yeah. So the follow-up question to this that I always like to ask is, if you could get 1 million followers like tomorrow, you just have it in your account tomorrow. Granted, they see your stuff, they could unfollow, all that good stuff. Would you take it, or would you rather grow an audience as you have them now, like in the rate that you're going?
That's such a good question. Because to be honest, it's not the followers I want.
Yeah.
I'm so far away from the people that I want to have conversations with.
Right.
And, you know, Dave Chappelle said this once, and, you know, it's kind of fucked up to say, but I think it's kind of real in terms of kind of where I came from. He said it as a joke, but when I heard it, it hit. He's like, if you want to make it out of the situation you're in, get to entertaining these white people. And I fucking heard that, and I was like, well, shit, man. Like, that's what I should get into. I want to do that. That's the thing. That I feel like I'm so sorry. I got lost in that.
No, you're good.
What was the question again? Just before. I was like, oh, I remember that so much.
If you could take 1 million followers,
okay,
would you, or would you rather grow at the rate you're growing?
So when he said that, I sat there and I was like, okay, the only way that I could make it out of the situations I'm in is either, I've been told at least, is either I entertain, I go play basketball, I create sick beats, or I can go become a construction worker because that was like a family business. Or I could do what my brother did. My brother is 16 years older than me, and he's been at UPS delivering packages since he was 17. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, in my head, there weren't that many options.
Right.
So when I started thinking about the people I wanted to see and the people I wanted to be around, a lot of them used media and entertainment to get there. But it's interesting how over the course of me being 10 or 5 or 18 years old, the dramatic direction and change that's taken. Like before, it was very comedy driven, and it was very black exploitation and things like that. And as I grew up, I kind of steered away from that because I didn't see myself as much as I wanted to, like the real me. Right. So then as I started to see Insecure, things like that pop up, a little bit more context to the experience of maybe what I'm going through as a producer or animator or a production artist or whatever. That changed. I remember hearing Insecure, Issa Rae talking about how she's meeting P. Diddy, having conversations with all these people, and the conversations they're having are the conversations that I talk about. And I take really seriously, like with the stats that matter. Yeah. A lot of those stats were pulled from current events, and then hearing a lot of those current events being talked about in circles that I don't get to be a part of is kind of hard. Right. And then seeing it where I'm in Portland, I'm watching all of these internet activists. Yeah. And I'm like, that's really difficult because I want to do something. I want to do something about this. There was even a moment when I got hired at Adidas and I started crying because at the moment I was making $100,000 and I was like, fuck, I made it, but what the fuck am I going to do with this money? Like, what am I supposed to do with this money? Like, can I just go to a different country and help? Like, what the fuck can I do? And
I think about that way too much, that everybody I knew who worked at Nike makes so much money. And with all that money, I just feel like it's so easy to just give it back to and like you never see it. Yeah. And that's a whole different rant, but like it's just crazy how some people can make so much money doing stuff and they just don't even think about giving it back. Yeah. But that comes from experiences as well. Yeah, they don't give it back because they don't understand where, certain people came from, everything like that.
Yeah, that's so fucking true, man. So fucking true. And I've seen it so much, especially being in Portland, because that's kind of the beginning of being in these corporate environments. Palo Alto was the beginning. That was the worst experience ever. But as I went through Portland, I started to see more passive stuff or sometimes even aggressive. You know, the leader, not to throw instrument under the bus, but the leader for instrument, that was one of the co-owners that we had a conversation, and that one was some of the hardest conversations I ever had being in corporate. And I still to this day blame a lot of some of the traumas I feel with corporate due to that experience. And yeah, it's been pretty eye-opening. So to get back to the question, I don't think I would take that, because what I really, really want from that is to be in the conversations with the right people. And if those million followers aren't the million that share the same ideas, what's the point?
Yeah, that's where I said as well. It's like, I don't want a million random people. I want a million people who understand and are about the same things.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So if you could choose the a million, I'm sure you'd take that.
Oh, yeah. If I could choose it, yeah, I would be like, oh, yeah.
And you talk about, you know, being a minority in corporate. Is there anything from that experience that, you know, really stuck out into like either hindering your career or maybe even like not learning from it, but like experiencing some of the things to make you an even better designer? Because I see that in a lot of your work, is that a lot of your experience, and like you've said, a lot of your experience, a lot of your life experience comes through your art. And that's like, that's some of the most beautiful things any of the artists I follow make, is the stuff that really comes from true experiences. But how is being in that corporate environment, and how is it now?
I'll say, I came into the corporate environment after Bird Eye. I wanted to be myself. And when I came in, being myself and interviewing as myself for the first time was amazing. It was dope. I got the job. But as I started being there, I started noticing the work isn't done. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, I grew up and I watched all this media, you know, and you learn all this shit and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. And then you get into the corporate world and you're like, oh shit, it's still developing and it's an active process. Yeah. And it's so hard not to be actively angry at that in the moment. So I think after my time at Instrument, I kind of gained a little bit more patience, but I also gained a tolerance for just saying, fuck you. Like, when I went to Adidas, I was like, fuck you. Like, there's no fucking way I'm doing this. And it wasn't even just selling the clothes. There were two very main things that stuck out. And one of them, they did a video to tell the company what they were doing for the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was a fucking UNICEF video, basically. They had this fucking video of like dolly shots of African children at a school that they helped build. And there was no fucking words, no dialogue. It was just all of these dolly shots, B-roll. And then they have one cut to this bigger black dude just sitting there chilling. And he's like, yeah, the money really helped. And that was fucking it. And I was like, that's the video you guys made? And then after that, I went to a fucking meeting and they were releasing clothes. And all of these clothes, they were so funny. They had running shoes for runners that think they're runners, but they're not really runners. And they had all these like categories. And all the pictures were all these skinny white people. And it didn't actually bother me because I wasn't tripping. But then we get to this section that they're called hound dogs or street hounds. And I was like, oh, fuck. And this older white dude gets up for this section. I'm like, this is it's gonna be white people. It's gonna be white people. And he fucking goes to the next slide, and it's all black people wearing all fucking like do-rags and shit. And I was like, oh, fuck you. And I was like, there's no way I could work here. And I felt like that it was the biggest slap in the face, because for a company like Nike to turn down Beyonce and be like, we're not going to hire you or do any contracts because you want more ownership over this shit. And Adidas is like, you know what? Fuck it. We'll give you that ownership. You get to own your brand. But then on the flip side, they're doing shit like that to the people who work and produce this content. Right. I couldn't do it. I was like, no. And so there's a really weird space that I'm in now where there's a tolerance where if you go above that and it's just no, I can't fuck with you. But then there's a floater space where I'm like, you're still in the process of working this out. Yeah. And I get it. No one,
at least you're trying.
Yeah, and no one's ever seen this before. Like no one's ever seen this shit before. We're developing at a rate that I don't think any of us can really keep up.
Yeah. And people are going to get things wrong, but it's the intention.
Yeah. And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Instrument fucked me up there where I was like, so many times we're supposed to focus on the intention. And I was like, well, hey, man, what about the impact of this stuff? If we don't acknowledge the impact, the intentions, what's that mean? You know, like
you can have good intentions and then the results are always shitty. Then
yeah,
maybe you need to change your intentions.
Exactly. And I'm like, you know, and it was so many. And actually, I'd never heard focus on intent so much until I came to the corporate space in Portland. And I will say this: Portland's corporate space is extremely passive. It is one of the most passive aggressive spaces I've ever worked in, because in Palo Alto, that shit was blatant. They did not give a fuck. There was sexism, racism, all kinds of shit. But here, I don't know who to stay away from. And I don't know how to gauge what's a toxic microaggression to something that I may just be taking in wrong because I was triggered earlier or something like that. So it's hard.
Yeah. I feel you. All right. I understand. Well, I think we're getting towards the end of it. So I'm going to ask two of the last questions is, how do you find time for your art? And then another thing is, you work in art, right? How do you differentiate? And like, for example, I've had weeks where, you know, I've made tons of stuff for work, but then I'm like, oh, I really want to go make my own passion stuff, but I'm burnt out. Like, where do you find that balance?
I don't give my job everything anymore.
Yep.
Bird Eye.
You figure that out.
Yeah, Bird Eye fucked that out of me. And I was like, great. You guys taught me how to be the best motion designer I could be, but at the same time, I learned to not give them everything, because it hurts when you give somebody so much and you want them to look at this beautiful thing you made. They're like, do it over. You're like, fuck. Yeah. And
it's hit you with a nitpick. They're like, yeah, reshoot it.
Yeah, and I was just like, but then I realized, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I sitting here giving them all my creative bullshit? I'm coming up with all these cool ideas. Why don't I use that shit for myself and give them the shit that they're sold on, that they're seeing everybody else do?
They're gonna like it. They're gonna like your 50%. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, cool. And I'm basically what I do with my meat and butter, my whatever bread and butter,
meat and potatoes.
Yeah,
is that what you're looking for?
Sure, meat and potatoes. Is oh man, yeah, my steak and eggs, exactly. I try to, with corporate and any real job that's paying me, I don't give them the creative license to jump out. The first couple of questions I asked, which I learned early, and I was like, this is fucking genius. I was like, ask them who their target audience is. Ask them who their brand audience is. And then what's the feel of the video? What's the feel of your brand? Give me 3 words that expresses your brand. And that alone just knocks out so much shit. Like, I'm just like, cool, I don't have to sit here and make any guesses. Let me go get you some references. I'm like, cool. And then when I get those references, they become like my animation guidebook. So after I get those references, I will design something similar, and we're going to stay in that category. And it's so helpful, because now I get to have a lot of fun in a design language, but I don't have to like go too far out and be like, oh, you want this, you want that.
And really stretch yourself and like have to go get a designer to help you go into that style. You're like, I know how to do this. So with corporate, I know how to do it. I'm just going to run through it. I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to experiment. But then my other stuff, like I assume your passion, you're like, I can go wherever I want. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why Stats That Matter, when I was doing that, I was like, okay, I want to be, this is so dumb, and I'm going to say it still, but I want to be the best that there is at 2D. And I know that's not real, but that's something that like drives me, where I'm like, yo, I want to know every style. If there's a style that I don't know, I want to do it. Like, the reason why I do colors now is because when I was in college, I was told I was colorblind. Yeah, my teacher literally called me out in front of the whole class and was like, I'm going to start administrating colorblind tests just because I think you might need one. I was like, fuck, man. Like, he called us all out. He really gave it to us. But, you know, after that, I was like, I want to work on color, because I was really good at environments. And then after I got out of color and environments, I was like, I'm not good at bodies. I want to work on I keep drawing my body. Like, I want to draw other bodies. So I started drawing bodies. And now I'm like, okay, what's next? And honestly, it's just character animation. I'm like, just finish Wake and Skate, man. You feel it now, and I feel it more than ever now. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that. The last question, then we'll like plug all your stuff because you have a lot of fun projects coming out. Is do you think that you'll make it big, and what is making it to you?
That's so funny.
I know.
That is so fucking funny. I have so many because I think I will make it big, and in the sense that when I was 7 years old, I got on Google, I looked up my name. My name meant two things. I was a serial killer in Russia, and I was Lord Byron, the poet. And I was like, nah, man, my name's gonna mean something different. It's gonna mean something before I die. And as I've gotten older, what that means looks different. So like, I want to be successful. I want to not have to worry about buying shit or food or anything like that.
Yeah.
I want to just be like, hey, I want to go get this and have okay credit. But
yeah, that's the second part you said. The hard part.
Success.
Yeah.
But what I really want is I want my story to be heard because I don't talk about it. I talk about it a lot, but not publicly as often. But I was a product of a rape. So not knowing my dad and my biological mom being a shit mom, and my other family was shit too. So coming up with all of that shit, I had this need to want to be accepted by them, or to at least be noticed or acknowledged. Right. So like one of the things I was like, I'm gonna make my story. Like I want this to get out there. Since you guys won't talk to me about it, I'm just gonna make it. And people will watch it. Yeah. And it will be your choice at that moment. And when I thought about that, when Black Lives Matter hit, that's actually when it really got me, is that I was like, holy shit, man. There's a lot of people that feel like this, and we are all not talking to each other. And we don't know that we all feel like this. And I was like, okay, this is going to be making it. If I make this cartoon and I finish this, even if it's just a pilot and I produce everything by myself before I die, that story gets fucking done. Someone watches it and they feel better. And, even if I don't make it in the conversations I want to, I would have said what I wanted to in those conversations.
I love that. So the last thing is I'd love to like plug some of your stuff. So like your projects coming forward. We didn't talk about the music and the music video stuff, but you said some of that stuff's coming up.
Yeah.
Wake and Skate is like the thing I'm most excited about, honestly. I was a big fan of that. But is there anything else? I mean, obviously we'll plug like your Instagram, all that stuff, but is there anything else coming out that you're like, if you're not going to watch anything, watch this?
So Wake and Skate does have a pilot episode, but I'm doing a 3-minute short that's based off of how I was dealing with quarantine life. Oh, yeah. So I'm doing that, and that's probably going to take another 6 months, but I have all the vocals recorded. I have all the backgrounds painted. Now it's just character animation. Okay. So there's that coming. I'm going and doing some live painting sessions at some art show. Oh,
yeah, I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah.
That looked really cool.
It was a fun one, and it sounds like I'm doing another one on 5/20. So that's going to be cool. It'll be at the No Folly Art Club over on Stark and like 45th, and that one's a really fun location. I'll be probably shooting some music videos this year. Oh, I'm getting into erotic stuff too. I don't have to jump just super deep into that, but where I am definitely, I'll have a lot of friends that have found themselves in the porn industry or things like that. And with my body paintings, they kind of got like a little bit of exposure, and they're like, oh, we want to do something with this. And there's that. And hopefully by the end of this year, I will be jumping into 3D, but not real 3D. I'll be in VR. Yeah. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be painting things in there. And
sick.
That's what I'll be up to.
I'm going to ask you one real quick question. Yeah. If you could animate for any TV show, even if it's canceled or anything, which one would it be?
Damn, you really did that. Even if it's canceled.
Yeah. Yeah, all of them.
That's fucked up. Because it's like, oh man, I know the studio. I would work for Titmouse no matter what. And they offered me a job in Canada, so I want to go. But then if I did a cartoon, it'd have to be one that means a lot to me and something that I felt like I saw my story in, which is funny that I'm gonna say it. It's As Told by Ginger, and that was one of my favorite cartoons growing up. And yeah, I really gave a shit about that. And,
producers love that one.
It was the Rugrats animators decided to do something a little bit more adult, but it was enough adult where the kids could watch it with their parents and still not get it, but get it because there was so much complicated relations with the parents and the conflicts going on at school, and just that was one of the shows that the main characters grew up. Yeah. They had 4 seasons of that, and it's because they had 4 years of high school, and it was done, and I loved it. There was no fucking college hit or nothing. It was like, cool, man. That's how you end a story. Like,
nothing's worse than when they just keep going.
Yeah. When they drag it on, I'm like, Degrassi. It kills me. It kills me.
Awesome. Well, this was super fun. I loved hearing your whole story. Thanks for being on Nobodies Project.
Yeah, thank you for being persistent, because I'm like, man,
I was.
The world's falling apart, and I'm like, ah. But we made it happen.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. If you want more information on this artist, you can find it on our website, nobodiesproject.com. You can follow us on Spotify as well as on our socials at the Nobodies Project on Instagram. But more importantly, we want you to be a part of this community, and you do this by submitting your artwork to us. We want the things that you're the most stoked on, maybe things that you're too nervous to show anybody else, but we want all of it. And you can do that by submitting your artwork at submit@thenobodiesproject.com. And we promise to look at every single person's artwork who is submitted, and everybody at the Nobodies Project will give you honest and heartfelt feedback. And thank you for being here and checking out the Nobodies Project.